Okay, so we're gonna make the tortilla española. Tortilla just means something flat. So I know in the United States, or in Central America, Mexico, we know of tortilla as being made of corn or flour or some other type of grain or starch. And I'll show you what we're gonna do here. This is basically just cut up potatoes and onions. It's almost like a frittata. I'm showing you how I use my peeler to peel potatoes. I feel like back in the day we used to do this and chop, 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 and I would always catch my thumb in there, so you don't have to do that. Just use it like a big knife, peel all the way around, take out big pieces of it, but however it works for you. You may not have this style of peeler, you may have some other, like a more square one, so you might want to buy a different one. Also, you can use, there's like a hole here, this pointy thing on the end here, this is for digging out eyes. So what you do is you press it against the potato and you kind of twist like this, and it digs out the eye or the brown spot or whatever it is. This one seems to be more like a malformation, so I'll come back to that. All right, and then you can scrub back and forth too if you need to get something out. This is too deep to scrub, so I'm just going to keep digging at it. I think it's just an inclusion where the potato maybe grew around a rock or something, because there's peel all the way down in there, but whatever. And you could actually even just be like, wait, what is this? And then cut it out. See, and it goes all the way through, so whatever. Still, it's not bad. It's just like where there was like a big deep dimple in the potato. All right, rinse that, see what I got. All right, and you'll see that sometimes there's spots on here. Just shave them off a little bit and they go away. All right, so I will peel 4 large russet potatoes here and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got these all peeled. I've rinsed them and I'm going to pat them dry because I don't really want them wet. One thing I want to remind you is do not put the peels down the disposal. You will clog it up. They're very starchy, so don't do that. Just throw them in the trash. It's sometimes easy to have a grocery sack, like a paper bag or a grocery bag, whatever, and just peel right into that and then throw the whole thing away. Okay, I've got about a 1/4 cup of olive oil in this pan. I'm going to turn it up to like medium high. And then I'm going to take a sharp paring knife and I'm just going to start cutting pieces off of here, off of each potato, and I'm turning it as I go, and the pieces are coming out about the same size. And I'm just cutting off the top of the potato, rotating it, cutting more, rotate. You can peel these the night before and keep them in cold water. That will keep them from turning brown. You could even cut them and keep the cut pieces in cold water. You can cut these in like cubes if you want to. I just find this to be easier. This is how my neighbor showed me how to do it when we lived in Madrid. And it just goes so much faster than, you know, having to futz with cutting it in half and then cutting it in quarters and cutting it in cubes, whatever. Just do this. It will go fast. They won't really have time to turn brown and we'll just be on our way here. You can add a little bit of onion at this point. That's not the basic recipe, but also acceptable. We're just gonna let these fry. Actually, I'm gonna turn it up to high. Like I said, this stove, sometimes it doesn't cooperate. And once it gets going, then I might turn it down. I'm trying to cook these so that they're cooked through. And there's that inclusion again in that potato. Whatever, it's like I said, it's not bad. It's just a place where it grew a big dimple. And these pieces, like I said, they're not going to be all exactly the same. They're going to be basically uniform. Good enough is good enough. As far as the pan goes, it must be a nonstick pan. Absolutely must be a nonstick pan, because we're going to put eggs in here, and if you don't use a nonstick pan, this will just turn it basically into scrambled eggs with potatoes. This pan also is probably about the largest size you will want to use. You're going to need a dinner plate to cover it, so when we invert it to flip it. So ideally, and this is, like I said, probably the largest pan I can use because of the size of my dinner plates. If your dinner plates are smaller, you might need a smaller pan. Like I said, just make sure it's non-stick, because otherwise it will be just a mess. Okay, so this I said is 4 large russet potatoes. You can use any potatoes you want. Technically, you could even leave the skins on if you want. I don't. However, traditionally that's not how it's done. So. Okay, so they're starting to fry here, which is fine. Seems like I can leave that on that setting for now. I'll give them a stir here when I'm done. I'm going to also add about a teaspoon of kosher salt. And you can hear it starting to fry. That's good. So you can eat this warm, you can eat it as a side dish, you can eat it as a main dish, you can eat it with a green salad, you can eat it cold in between pieces of French bread, you can heat it up and eat it between pieces of bread. In Spain they have bread. It's similar to French bread, but it's not exactly the same, but it's definitely not sandwich bread. So since we don't have Spanish bread typically here, you just need some sort of hard roll. And then you can put a piece inside there. They don't even put any condiments or anything on it. Just eat it between 2 pieces of bread. And it's such a delicious combination. The chewy, crusty bread with the egg, the salt, potato. It's very good. Like I said, this is super ubiquitous. It's everywhere. All right, so there's that. Today I'm going to leave it on high. I want it to keep frying here. And we'll just let those go for a few minutes here. I'll start cooking the eggs. Come back every little while, every so often, and give them a stir. The moment you see are starting to cook, that's how we want them to be. I'm probably going to need a dozen eggs or so for this. You need enough eggs that almost completely covers the potatoes. Okay, so I have 18 eggs here, and then I have a couple extras. I'll crack a dozen first and then see if I need more. You can also have this all done. You can crack the eggs and whip them, have them ready, have your potatoes ready, so that you're not trying to pay attention to more than one thing at a time, if that works better for you. Throw the eggshells away. There's no need to put them down the disposal. I'm going to show you what I'm doing here because you might not realize. So the eggs are clean. They've already been washed. I just crack them on whatever. Like, here. Some people crack them with a spoon. And I'm just going to crack them right here. And they do make a mess, right? So there's a crack, nice crack. Open it up, dump it in. And then throw this in the top. And you're going to get egg strings everywhere, so try to keep your stuff close by. These are nice yellow yolks. And they are cracking really well, so that's good. If you don't get a good crack, hit it again. Sometimes the shell just kind of crumbles, and then you get pieces in the bowl. And I wanted to show you how you can use the edge of the eggshell to get those pieces out, if you didn't already know this. So we'll just see how these continue to break here. All right, this one's kind of getting smashed, so I don't know. So say a piece falls off, right? And it falls in the eggs like this. Use the edge of, here. Say a piece falls off, right? So you're going to use the edge of the eggshell, and you're going to pull it to the side, and you can pull it out that way. The edge of the eggshell is sharp enough to cut through the white, because if you try to grab it with your fingers, you're never going to get it just because of the way the yolk is. Or sorry, the white. So that's the trick on that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Keep stirring. You can see the steam is coming off them. And they're starting to get a little bit translucent. Might actually turn it down just a little bit. Nine, 10, 11, oops, 12. Sometimes they have these little spots on them. That is actually part of the egg. It's fine. Sometimes you'll see blood in them. That's fine too. Nothing terrible. If you're worried about stuff like that, you can just crack each egg individually into a bowl. Sometimes that's a good practice anyway if you're not sure how old your eggs are. We can talk more about eggs later. So that's 12. I'm going to do 14. 13. 14. I'm going to keep these others here handy just so. Okay. You can whip this with a whisk, you know, like this. You can take your whisk and you could whip these, right? You could do this. I'm actually not, I don't want to hang around here for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them into the cup of the NutriBullet. You can just crack them right in there. You don't have to crack them separately into a bowl. Okay, now the one thing I will caution you about is you don't need to spin this like crazy, like 2 short pulses, because you don't want it to get all foamy and frothy. So 1, 2. I just want the eggs beaten. I don't want any foam on the top. And look in there. If you see clumps of clear stuff, that means that the yolk and the white are not all the way incorporated. And you might want to give it one more short spin. This looks pretty good. This is what I have. Big container of blended eggs. Like I said, you can use the whisk or fork and do them by hand, but I did them too. Alrighty, these are coming along. I'm going to turn them back up. Like I said, sometimes with this stove, I have to futz with it because it's too hot, it's too cold. It's too hot, it's too cold. I don't know. This is a really good way to use up eggs if you don't, you know, if they've been in there. Eggs will last past the expiration date by, I don't know. I don't really know. A week, more. One good way to test them if you're not sure is put them in a big bowl of water, cool water, so that you can see them and they're not all on top of each other. And the ones that float, if any of them float, like if they're halfway, that's fine. If they come all the way to the top though, then you probably don't want to eat those. All right, and now these are starting to cook. I don't want to mess with them too much because they're going to start to get mashed, and I want them to fry. I don't need them to turn into goo here. So I will stop messing with them maybe a little bit, and I will let them cook. You can do the flip like this if this is something that you can do. Be careful. There's hot oil in there. You don't want to burn yourself. With hot oil everywhere. Okay, I'm going to get a big plate. Platter, you can use something else, but it should be a ceramic, potentially like a melamine plate. It needs to be something that's not going to, and it has to fit over the thing. Like I said, this pan is almost too big. I like it because of the depth and that it's my only non-stick pan and it has to be non-stick for this, so I'll show you something else that we can do too to kind of make the tortilla a little bit smaller. The thickness of this can vary if you don't want it to be super tall. Normally it's like about 1.5 inches thick. If you don't want it to be that tall, that thick, then you can use fewer potatoes, less egg. Okay, I'm gonna let that cook. I'll be back in a second. Okay, so it's been about 6 or 7 minutes. The potatoes are all opaque. They're all soft. Some of them are a little bit crispy. So I'm going to take my egg mixture. Well, it's not even a mixture, it's just eggs. And I'm gonna pour this over the top of the tortilla. Yeah, that's a good amount of eggs. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to turn this down a little bit, like to medium high, and I'm going to make little spaces in between the potatoes for the egg to go all the way down and reach the bottom. Don't want to burn the egg, right? And I can push down here, right? And some egg will flow to the edges. That's what we want to do. Kind of just move the potatoes so more egg gets down to the bottom of the pan. Actually, I'm going to turn it back up because, like I said, you don't want to burn the egg, but you want to keep it cooking, but not burn it. So, like I said, this pan is a little bit bigger than this burner. Keep the egg kind of moving towards the bottom. You're not scrambling it. You're just moving the potatoes aside so that the eggs can come in contact with the hot bottom of the pan. And you're going to keep doing this for a little while here until we have less and less on the top that's raw. It seems to be cooking more on one side, as you can see. So I'm kind of just moving my pan around. Like I said, sometimes you have to just deal with what you have. Okay, I can smell the eggs starting to cook on the bottom, so I am going to turn it down a little bit because I don't like dry brown eggs. Okay, so now you can see that when I move it, it's taking longer and longer for the raw part to run in there. So now we're just gonna let it cook a little bit more like this. Traditionally, this is served a little bit underdone. I personally do not like runny eggs, so I like to cook it all the way. But you can see that it's coming together here now. Okay, so now I'm gonna let it cook here for, I don't know, a little bit longer. Maybe if you can find a couple places where you can move the potatoes aside and get some more of that yolk down to the bottom. The majority of the cooking is done on this side. Once we flip it, then it won't be too much longer on the other side. And you can see that partly, this is why it's so important to use a non-stick pan. It's still stuck a little bit over here. So we just need to let it cook. I'm going to turn up a touch more. still stuck over here, as you can see. All right, we're getting there. So that was 4 large russet potatoes, peeled and sliced with a teaspoon of salt, about a 1/4 cup of olive oil, and 14 eggs. All right, so now you can see it's loose in the pan and it's moving, right? As I do this, it's circulating. So that means it's done on that side. So here, this part can be dangerous. You can kind of move the edges in, and then you're gonna take this plate, and ideally the plate fits over the pan. And this is heavy, you might wanna do it over the sink, and you flip it onto the plate. And that's perfectly done. Now you're gonna take the plate over the burner and you're gonna slide the tortilla off the plate back into the pan on the other side to cook the other side. Okay, so we'll settle that in. I'm gonna turn it down a tiny bit. I don't want it to cook. Like I said, I want it to cook through because I'm not a fan of runny eggs. You can take a clean spatula and mess with these edges if you want them to be more uniform. And once you start smelling the eggs cooking on the bottom, turn off the burner. I'm going to get a plate. Your nose will tell you a lot. Okay, now you're just going to slide it out onto the plate. Voila! There's your tortilla. Traditionally, this is served with strips of roasted red bell pepper or pimienta around it, cut into triangles. You can cut it into cubes. You can cut it however you want. Serve hot, cold, like I said, as a main dish, as a side dish, as a sandwich. So there's that. If you cut it open and it's still too runny inside, you can either put it back in a pan or you can microwave it. If you're going to be reheating this, you might want to do it a little bit underdone so that when you reheat it, it's not completely and totally rubbery. There you go.